Brilliance Audio.
A Vampire's Kiss by Rebecca Zanetti. Performed by Stella Bloom.
1001 Dark Nights. Once upon a time, in the future. I was a student, fascinated with stories and learning. I studied philosophy, poetry, history, the occult, and the art and science of love and magic. I had a vast library at my father's home and collected thousands of volumes of fantastic tales. I learned all about ancient races and bygone times, about myths and legends, and dreams of all people through the millennium. And the more I read, the stronger my imagination grew, until I discovered that I was able to travel into the stories, to actually become part of them. I wish I could say that I listened to my teacher and respected my gift, as I ought to have. If I had, I would not be telling you this tale now. But I was foolhardy and confused, showing off with bravery. One afternoon, curious about the myth of the Arabian Nights, I travelled back to ancient Persia to see for myself if it was true that every day Shahryar, Persian for king, married a new virgin and then sent yesterday's wife to be beheaded. It was written, and I had read, that by the time he met Scheherazade, the vizier's daughter, he'd killed 1,000 women. Something went wrong with my efforts. I arrived in the midst of the story and somehow exchanged places with Scheherazade, a phenomena that had never occurred before and that still to this day I cannot explain. Now I am trapped in that ancient past. I have taken on Scheherazade's life, and the only way I can protect myself and stay alive is to do what she did to protect herself and stay alive. Every night, the king calls for me and listens as I spin tales, and when the evening ends and dawn breaks, I stop at a point that leaves him breathless and yearning for more. And so the king spares my life for one more day, so that he might hear the rest of my dark tale. As soon as I finish a story, I begin a new one, like the one that you, dear reader, have before you now.
Prologue. 1849. Dying was just as painful as Ivy had imagined. Her head felt 3 sizes too small, with a pain that pounded through her ears. She lay on the cot in the old shed, waiting for her time when she could see her mamma again. She'd lived nearly 22 summers, which was quite a long time for a woman not to get married, but the farm was too far from any village for her to have made any friends. Her father had little use for her other than to upkeep the house and tend the few remaining animals. She had a gift with them. Even her father could see that, and once he'd even allowed her to visit 2 farms a distance away that were having problems with their livestock. She'd somehow sensed their illnesses, as well as which herbs to include in their feed. The farmers had been so grateful they'd sent her home with enough material to make 2 dresses. It was too bad she couldn't save the crops as well. The famine was killing all of the small farms. Somehow it was her fault he hadn't been granted sons before her mother passed on. There was only Ivy, and when she'd caught the fever, he had brought her to a place housing the sick and left her. At least he'd bothered to cart her into the makeshift hospital where so many were dying. In fact, many of them were put out in wooden sheds, awaiting their turn to go beyond. She tried to stretch her legs beneath the heavy blanket and winced as the wool rubbed the horrendous rash on her legs. The healer had called the illness typhus, and she supposed something about to kill her should have such a terrifying name. The hole-riddled door opened, but she didn't bother opening her eyes. She felt the life draining from her. And she was ready. It was time. A heavy hand descended on her shoulder, and she blinked, looking up, her vision blurry.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?